Welcome into CBS News 24/7. I'm Juliette Goodrich. World leaders, they push back against President Trump's latest tariffs, but is Trump open to a deal? Plus, another day of wild swings for U.S. stocks. We're watching the closing numbers on Wall Street. And then later, how American families will be impacted by Trump's tariffs. We're going to break down the foods that could cost you more at the grocery store. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Right now, President Trump signing an executive order that the White House says will invigorate the coal industry. So let's take a listen live.
Secretary, and he said, "Sir, you have one person who's much better than me at this, Chris Wright." I said, "Who the hell is Chris Wright? I have no idea who he is." And then I learned that he's the most respected person in the energy business by far, far and away. For Doug to say that, Doug's got a big ego. It was very tough for him to say that. Catherine was there, right? Catherine, you said, "Wow, I've never heard that before." But Chris, you guys are fantastic. Stand up, all three of you, please stand up. Yeah, that's a great team. It's no better team than that. And they're going to produce energy the likes of which nobody's seen before. You know, we need to do the AI, all of this new technology that's coming online. We need more than double the energy, the electricity that we currently have. You take all of the electricity in the country right now for houses, for buildings, for everything. We need to more than double it to be number one. We're now way ahead of everybody at AI. China's in second place, but way behind. And they're going to be producing a lot of energy and a lot of electricity for this. And so are we, and we're going to get approvals very fast. And I would say the man that's almost comparable to you in terms of the importance to this, maybe he's even more comparable, I hate to tell you, a guy named Lee Zeldin, who's a friend of mine for a long time. He was a great... Yeah. Lee was a great lawyer, and he ran for office, and he won immediately. I gave him a very important endorsement. He won for Congress in an area that was unwinnable. He couldn't have, they were all saying, why is he wasting his time? That's Democrat territory. And I liked Lee and knew Lee, and he ended up winning a seat in a massive upset. Nobody knew what happened, actually, and then he was there for a long time. How many years were you there? 8 years, was very popular, and then he almost won the governorship of New York, which is lost by a few points, which was an amazing run. And I said, we got to get you in with us in some form, and we did. And he's head of the environmental agency, EPA, and doing a great job. And I said, if we have a nuclear power plant, Lee, can you get it approved in less than a month? He said, what? He said, I'll do it faster. And by the way, he'll do a fast job, but he's going to do also a great job. It's going to be an important job. We don't even smile about it. But, you know, I've been involved in the approval process for a long time, having been in real estate. And you go years and years and years for absolutely nothing. And even in those days, I used to say, you know, this whole thing could have been approved in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and it would have been just as good. But they'd take you down the path, and you'd spend years waiting, and then sometimes you get rejected. I wasn't rejected too much. I was the king of zoning. I did well, but it was such nonsense. It was so terrible. The process was so terrible. But this is the big leagues now, and he's the head person in the whole country, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate you doing it. And already they're respecting you very greatly. So thank you very much, Lee. Great job. So we have a lot of senators and congressmen and women, and I'm going to just introduce the ones that I see here. Because, you know, it's always a problem when I do this because I leave one or two out, and that's the end. I never get their vote again. I never get their vote. It takes years to recover, but we'll give it a shot because Senator John Barrasso, who's my friend and a great gentleman. Thank you very much, John, for being here. Thank you, John. Cynthia Lummis, fantastic woman who believes like I do, and she believes like I do in these people, right? She believes in them maybe even more than I do. That's pretty good from day one. Thank you, Cynthia. You're doing a fantastic job. Kevin Kramer, my friend. Where is Kevin? Because Kevin, I think he was here because he had a problem, and I just will pay my respects. He wanted to be here so badly, but he had a difficult problem that he's working through, and we all love Kevin. John Hovan. John, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Go ahead. Steve Daines. Thank you, Steve. And Steve is a picker of great candidates, like he picked a guy named Tim Sheehy, who's here. Where's Tim? Where is Tim? Thank you, Tim. And Tim Sheehy has turned out to be a wonderful senator, and that was your pick. And we went with it, and you were right. And we have a great one in Tim. So thank you, Tim, and thank you, Steve. Shelley Moore Capito. Shelley, thank you very much. West Virginia. From West Virginia, she has to you have no choice. Even if you didn't like it, you have to like all, right? But they were doing a number on you. They were doing a number on you with the coal stuff, and you have not only coal, but you have among the best coal anywhere in the world. So thank you very much. A friend of mine for a long time, I'm the one that got him to change his religion in a sense. He changed the party. He went from a Democrat. I said, Jim, you're not a Democrat. But he changed to Republican. He's one of the most popular Republicans and one of the most popular political leaders in the country, Jim Justice. I call him Big Jim. Big Jim Justice. Good. You look good, Jim. And he was in the business. And so am I doing the right thing? You would know better than anybody in this room. Am I doing the right thing, Jim? Huh? I think so, right? Thank you very much, Jim. Cindy Hyde Smith. Cindy, thank you, hon. Very good. Good job. People are going to be happy. And all friends of mine. Mike Lee. Mike, thank you very much. We have a lot of people from Congress, congressmen and women, representatives. Morgan Griffith. Morgan, thank you. Thank you very much. Bruce Westerman. Bruce, thank you, Bruce. Bob Latta. Bob Latta. Thank you, Bob. Good job. Troy Balderson. Troy, haven't seen you in a long time since that early race. I endorsed him before anyone knew who he was, and he ended up winning. That was another surprise, right? And that was a long time ago. Yep, you're doing a great job. Thank you very much, Troy. Carol Miller. Carol, thank you. Carol, West Virginia. Riley Moore. Riley. Hi, Riley. Thanks. Mike Boast. Mike, thank you very much. Troy Downing. Troy, thank you. Oh, he has something. What is it, coal? Is there coal in that bag? Huh? Even better, it's clean coal. I like it. I'll take it right now. Thank you very much. Hal Rogers. Hal, thank you. Thank you, Hal. Andy Barr. Thank you, Andy. Good luck with everything. I hear good things. Troy Downing. Troy, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Troy. Hal Rogers. Oops. Harriet Hageman. Harriet. Hi. How are you, Harriet? We just left Harriet. This is one of the finest attorneys you will ever see. I have seen her in action, and she is brutal. I never want her against me, that I can tell you. Dan Muser. Dan. Thank you, Dan. Thanks, Dan. Good job you're doing. Wesley Hunt, my friend, too. Wesley, great. I love your commercial. Pete Stauber. Pete. Thank you, Pete. Great hockey player he was, right? Great hockey player. And a great gentleman just broke
the president still calling out supporters of this order right now, an executive order he's about to sign. Let's bring in CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro with the details on what this executive order is and what the event is all about. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This executive order that we will see President Trump sign is focused on the coal industry. And just looking at the fact sheet the White House provided to reporters leading into this event, it is focused on lifting existing regulations, barriers on coal mining, prioritizing coal leasing on federally owned lands, rescinding any moves taken in the past administration and really the past decade to transition America away from coal production. And just some context, right now, coal makes up about 16% of the electricity in the United States, a dwindling percentage. What Trump is doing here is looking to reinvigorate that. He also made a mention just now in coal-powered artificial intelligence data centers. We know that is something the president wants more investment in, these AI centers. But just from talking to energy experts leading up to this executive order, these data centers are already powered by natural gas, renewable energy, and in part coal. And whether Trump wants it all to be powered by coal remains to be seen. But this executive order is just the latest step that he's taking to kind of undo some of the environmental regulations from past administrations. He has already withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement, and the EPA, under his watch, under the watch of the Commissioner Lee Zeldin, has already rolled back 31 environmental regulations, including those that deal with reducing air pollution.
All right, so Aaron, as we're waiting for the president to sign this executive order, let's talk to you about tariffs. We just heard that Canada's announcing 25% counter tariffs on U.S.-made vehicles, and China, of course, plans to fight the tariffs. So how is the Trump administration responding?
Yeah, this is a major point right now when it comes to President Trump's tariffs. And on China, the White House has really indicated they're not backing down on this. They're going to implement an additional 50% tariff after midnight tonight, bringing it to a total of 104% tariff on Chinese goods. At the same time, they have signaled they are open to negotiation with other trading partners, have said that over 70 countries have reached out to the White House to begin negotiations. Trump officials say they're already beginning conversations with Japan, and that they will make, quote, tailor-made plans to each country that comes to the negotiating table, but they are remaining bullish on China. We heard from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt talk a little bit about this during her press briefing earlier this afternoon. Take a listen to what she had to say.
Look, I just spoke to the president about this, and he believes that China wants to make a deal with the United States. He believes China has to make a deal with the United States. It was a mistake for China to retaliate. The president, when America is punched, he punches back harder. That's why there will be 104% tariffs going into effect on China tonight at midnight. But the president believes that she and China want to make a deal. They just don't know how to get that started. And the president also wanted me to tell all of you that if China reaches out to make a deal, he'll be incredibly gracious, but he's going to do what's best for the American people.
And the White House there seems to be indicating they want Chinese officials to call them first. And we also heard from White House Deputy Chief of Staff on Policy Stephen Miller, who voiced confidence that China would come to the table, in part because they're making the bet that because of China's reliance on exports to the U.S. and these tariffs, that they will be hurt economically, and also making the bet that potential negotiations with other large trading partners, such as Canada, Mexico, those in Europe, would help isolate China and bring the second biggest market in the world to the negotiating table with the U.S.
Aaron Navarro. Aaron, thank you so much. Another volatile day for the markets as the trade war turns into a staring contest between the U.S. and China. The Trump administration indicating it is taking calls from nearly 70 countries to negotiate on tariffs. So let's take a look at our interactive stock market heat map. This is brought to you by FinViz. It's showing the top 500 stocks, all of this in real time. The red indicates the stock is down, the green means it's up, and the size of the box represents the size of the company. So another down day today in what's becoming a trend. So CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joining us live now to break it down. Hi, Kelly. Thanks so much. Walk us through the stocks today because we opened higher and gained some ground, and then talk about how we ended up.
Well, I think, Jules, I said the exact same thing to you yesterday when we talked. Strap in as I walk you through the roller coaster of the day. So, yes, we did open quite high. The Dow was actually up over 1,400 points at one time. There was a lot of investor excitement that there could be some negotiations and deals to be had. You know, we are hearing from the White House that over 50 plus countries are calling and coming to the table. And so there was a lot of excitement that maybe this deadline that's coming at midnight might not be as severe as originally expected. Then, as we got closer and closer to midnight, and none of those talks have yet materialized into firm deals or stays or whatever might come of those talks, you started to see that those gains start to go away. And around midday or so, we were still in the green. The last 30 minutes of trading, Jules, was I would look at my phone to just check where stocks were, and we were down close to 800 points at one point. We did ultimately finish up not as bad, but this really speaks to the volatility and just the reactionary mindset that investors are in right now.
Yeah, I kept doing a refresh as well, and it certainly was changing, minute by minute. Let's talk about this. President Trump says all these tariffs will be worth it to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. So let's dig a little bit deeper. Are we set up for that? What would that look like in the United States?
So there's a number of different things that would need to come into play in order to make that possible. So the obvious one is time. This is just going to take time. There are some industries that have existing factories that have capacity, but by and large, a lot of the manufacturing capabilities that we might have had decades ago are no longer there. And so it would take time to build those up. It would also take money, billions, and billions and billions and maybe trillions of dollars in order to do that. The other thing is labor. We need people to build out that manufacturing capability. Right now, the manufacturing industry is actually short people already in order to fill some of those tougher roles. And so if you bring more of that here, it's great in terms of more American jobs, but we actually need the bodies to fill those roles. And another big one is energy, Jules. This isn't something that is being talked about a ton. I mean, we did just hear, of course, the president is making some investments in energy, but there needs to be more electricity in order to power these factories. That's something that we have heard across a number of different industries, whether it be AI or electric vehicles. If we bring more manufacturing here, we're going to need more power that a lot of experts I'm talking to are saying that the grid just currently doesn't have right now.
All right, Kelly O'Grady, as always, thanks so much. Turning now to some major decisions by the Supreme Court on two high-profile immigration cases. First, the court paused an order requiring the return of a Maryland father mistakenly deported to a prison in El Salvador. Second, the court allowed mass deportations to continue as long as certain rules are followed. So CBS News Department of Justice correspondent Scott McFarland joining us live now with what the court's argument is to allow these deportations to continue. Thanks for joining us.
It's good to be here. This is a pause button that's been hit by the Supreme Court, and not the only time they pressed it today. We begin with the case of the Alien Enemies Act, this 18th century law that had not been invoked since internment during World War II that the Trump administration is trying to use for deportations of suspected foreign nationals. The Supreme Court has opened the door for the resumption of the use of that Alien Enemies Act, but they have a big caveat that there needs to be some form of due process for foreign nationals who'd be deported that way, which is not how it was employed March 15th, when 200 plus Venezuelan nationals were deported by surprise in the dark of night without a court remedy, and at least one mistake was made in the process. This will likely continue to be litigated by those representing Venezuelan nationals, and it'll likely be litigated in Texas versus Washington, D.C., where the initial case was brought. That's part of the venue argument that the Supreme Court put out last night. But in the meantime, deportations of this sort can resume so long as there's some form of due process.
So the court also decided to pause an order that was requiring the return of a man that the Trump administration has admitted was deported by, I guess, an administrative error. Is that correct? So what's happening in that case?
Yes, yet another pause button, as we referred to earlier. In the case of Mr. Abrigo Garcia, it was a mistaken deportation on March 15th. He had a court order previously that he was not to be sent to El Salvador, a country he fled when he was younger. He was sent to El Salvador along with the others on those flights March 15th. The Supreme Court is now reviewing the matter because a lower court judge in Maryland ordered the return of Mr. Abrigo Garcia by last night, midnight Eastern time. The Supreme Court hit the pause button, said they want to take a closer look at the arguments from both sides. What's key here is the Trump administration argues they can't bring him back now because he's in the custody of the prison in El Salvador. The Supreme Court will measure those arguments and see where things go from here. But in the meantime, the matter is on hold. It is frozen, and Mr. Abrigo Garcia remains locked up in El Salvador.
All right, Scott, while we have you, let's talk about another pause button. The court also paused a lower court order requiring that certain probationary government workers be rehired. So let's talk about the argument there.
Yeah, the federal workers, these probationary workers, the ones who are new to the job or have been newly promoted, they sued to get their jobs back, claiming a violation of due process in employment. A lower court sided with them, ordered they be restored to their jobs. The Supreme Court's putting that on hold. There's not an issue so much on the case as much as the Supreme Court says it was the wrong parties, the wrong people filed this challenge. It needs to be some other different class of people. It's unclear who that's supposed to be, but there'll be more lawsuits filed to try to restore these federal workers to their jobs. And my review of the case shows these are not just obscure agency employees. The Supreme Court is impacting through this decision Veterans Affairs employees, Department of Defense employees, two of the largest federal agencies in the U.S. government.
Scott McFarland. Scott, thank you. Let's take you back out live to the White House, where right now President Trump is set to sign an executive order aiming to boost the coal industry. We will keep monitoring this throughout CBS News 24/7 and bring you new developments should they unfold. Plus, a roof collapse at a popular nightclub in the Dominican Republic leaves dozens dead. What we're learning about the victims next. We're following developing news overseas. Dozens of people are dead and 160 others injured when a roof collapsed at a popular nightclub in the Dominican Republic. It happened in Santo Domingo. CBS News correspondent Meg Oliver joining us now with the very latest. So, Meg, what do we know so far?
Juliet, the death toll continues to rise. At least 44 people have died and more than 160 are injured. 15 hours after the roof collapsed on hundreds of people at this nightclub, the frantic search continues for survivors as they remove heavy debris, as you can see there from that aerial shot. Canine dogs have been brought in to help in the effort. Now, the roof caved in around 1 in the morning at Jet Set nightclub in Santo Domingo. Witnesses say a thunderous sound exploded, followed by panic and chaos. One concert goer threw himself into a corner and says he narrowly survived because the beam over him didn't collapse. So many people were injured, ambulances had to take 2 to 3 people at a time to the hospital. The club has released a statement saying the loss of life leaves us in a state of profound pain and dismay. They're working with authorities to try and determine what caused this to happen. In the meantime, the club is asking for blood donations. Juliet?
Yeah, it's just frightening to see that. So do we know anything about the victims right now?
Yeah, news is just coming in, Juliet. CBS News has confirmed that former Houston Astros pitcher Octavio Dotel was killed. The World Series champ from 2011 was just 51 years old. We also know another former MLB player, Nelson Cruz's sister, Nelsie Cruz. She was the governor of Monte Cristi in the DR. She also has died. As we start learning more of the victims, their names and their stories, the director of the Center of Emergency Operations is holding out hope. He still believes there are many people still trapped alive. This is an active search and rescue scene at this moment. Juliet?
All right, Meg Oliver. Thank you, Meg. Mahmoud Khalil, the former Columbia University student who participated in pro-Palestine protests, went before an immigration judge today. He's a legal resident with no criminal record. The Trump administration has accused him of being a Hamas supporter. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman joining us now. So thanks for joining us, Katrina. What are your key takeaways from this?
Juliet, so what happened at this hearing is that the judge has set a deadline of 5 p.m. tomorrow for the Department of Homeland Security to produce evidence about why Mahmoud Khalil should be removed from this country. She's then set a removability hearing for Friday, and she says that if she doesn't get this evidence, she's going to terminate this case on Friday, Juliet.
All right, Katrina Kaufman, thank you so much for that update there. Let's turn to severe weather now that slammed parts of the South and the Midwest. In all, at least 24 people have been killed in the storms. In hard-hit Kentucky, we have new drone video. It shows the extent of the devastating flooding happening in Frankfort. The governor says an 8-year-old was among those killed in the state's historic flooding.
Unfortunately, we have some more tough news to share. Since our update yesterday morning, we've confirmed 2 more deaths, bringing our total to 4 individuals, 4 children of God lost to this flooding.
The flooding shut down dozens of state roads and forced people out of their homes. CBS News' Nicole Valdez is in Frankfort with the latest.
It was only a few hours ago where the road I'm standing on was once underwater. Now all that's left is a layer of mud caked on every home and business here in downtown Frankfort. It sits just alongside the Kentucky River, which still sits at major flood stage. Of course, so many in this community are trying to wrap their heads around the second flood event they've dealt with in just a 2-month period. Earlier, we met Chris Mays, the owner of a local tattoo shop here, as he waded through water to see the damage inside the business he's owned for the last 10 years and barely had words to describe it. He says he's truly lost everything and isn't sure whether he'll be able to recover and rebuild. It's a situation that so many Kentuckians are dealing with, and several others dealing with the loss of their loved ones. Across the region, we know more than 24 people have lost their lives. Here in Kentucky, that number is at least 5, including 1 young boy who was swept away in floodwaters right here in Frankfort. Governor Andy Beshear met us here and told us this is emotional for him, too. He and his family live here in Frankfort. They walk their dog down the street. Their kids go to their favorite ice cream shop here. And he recognizes the pain and the emotion surrounding those who are really trying to figure out what their next steps are and whether or not they will rebuild. Meanwhile, the recovery, at least the immediate recovery, will take some time. We know that the Kentucky River is one of many that will stay at major flood stage, likely through the end of the week. Nicole Valdez, CBS News, Frankfort, Kentucky.
All right, we come back out live to our CBS News 24/7 maps. Zoe Mintz joining us to kind of give us a look, and you were saying the green really shows where the areas are that are impacted.
Yeah, I mean, if we take back a look at below my feet and show you all of these dots in green, they kind of look like, I don't know, little bugs on our map. They're not bugs, they're alerts, they're polygons. It spans all the way from Texas over to the Carolinas and up across the Mississippi Valley, including the Ohio River Valley as well. But the hardest hit spots, as we showed you, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, widespread major river flooding currently going on. But like Nicole showed you, those river levels will continue to go down, and that is great news as the storm system that brought all of this rain and brought all of this flooding has quickly made its way off the east coast of the United States. That is great news. There's going to be a couple of days that we can pick up the pieces, but you notice on the northernmost edge of this system, snow is falling. Yes, the northeastern part of the United States, including Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, could potentially see up to 7 inches of snow in spring. Don't forget, it's officially spring, but it's definitely not feeling like that for many Americans. Right below my feet, these are freeze watches and freeze warnings that are in effect, as these areas are not used to seeing freezing temperatures this time of year, and any sensitive vegetation that is outdoors is likely going to die overnight tonight, as we are going to continue to see again widespread freezing temperatures from the Midwest all the way to the east coast of the United States. That includes the Carolinas and up to Virginia. So if you do have any sensitive vegetation outdoors, again, cover it, bring it inside tonight. It is going to be a chilly one out there as that storm system departs, but we're already tracking our next storm system that will be developing later tomorrow evening and continuing into Thursday and Friday. Again, it will be across the central parts of the country where anywhere from 1 to 3 inches of additional rain is possible. But the good news with this upcoming system, Jules, is the fact that it's not landing on the exact same spot as the one that we saw last week. So yes, there is going to be an additional 1 to 2 inches of rain, but not an additional half a foot to a foot like what we saw last week. So there is definitely going to be time to pick up the pieces to continue to dry out over the week ahead.
Yeah, a little bit of a break.
Exactly.
All right, Zoe, thank you. Another senior military officer forced out by the Trump administration, what the Pentagon is saying today. You're watching CBS News 24/7. President Trump announcing the U.S. would hold direct talks with Iran this weekend on its nuclear program. Iran immediately pouring water on that report, saying they would only hold indirect talks with the U.S. in Oman. Tehran called Trump's comments yesterday psychological warfare. So let's bring in CBS senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata to break this down. So, Charlie, what's going on here, and what can we expect from these talks?
Hey, Juliet, off to a great start, right? So it depends on who you ask. I have to say that was a surprise announcement from President Trump that Iran would have a very bad day if no agreement is reached. What that agreement looks like, we don't know yet, and it might be down to negotiations. So it might be that the Trump administration is looking for a sort of return to an enhanced surveillance program of Iran's civilian nuclear program that was similar to the one he pulled out of back in 2018. That's like looking at the non-weaponized development. Or whether they'll demand that Iran completely dismantle its nuclear programs. That's been called the Libya option. And Prime Minister Netanyahu cast his vote yesterday during that quick, brief meeting. That would literally mean crating everything up and shipping it out, as Gaddafi did in Libya. That raises enforcement issues. Now, Trump made clear Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. So U.S. officials I've spoken to today say these talks come at a time when there has been a huge beefed up military power in the CENTCOM region, right? That includes Iran. By the end of the week, there'll be a second aircraft carrier there. It's the USS Carl Vinson. It has 2 guided missile destroyers, a guided missile cruiser. That joins the USS Harry S. Truman, which is already there, with an additional 3 destroyers, another cruiser. There are a number of forward deployed B-2 stealth bombers currently stationed at Diego Garcia. So that's not just a flex. Those weapons are capable of penetrating deep underground fortifications. Iran has pretty much lost all of its air defenses after Israeli airstrikes last October. That also damaged its missile production facilities. Traditional allies like Hamas, Hezbollah, and even the Assad regime in Syria are no longer a threat to Israel in any meaningful way. So it really just depends on how aggressive the Trump administration is going to be this weekend in forcing Iran to come to the bargaining table and making a deal.
All right, next question for you. Senior Navy officer at NATO was fired by the Trump administration. So what was behind that dismissal?
It's a good question. The latest person to be dismissed was Vice Admiral Shoshana Chatfield. She was the top U.S. admiral to NATO's military committee here. As far as why, Pentagon chief spokesman Sean Parnell issued a short statement that she was dismissed due to a loss in confidence in her ability to lead, which is sort of like a boilerplate statement. Grateful to her years of service, etc. But she had been signaled out for making so-called woke comments about the need for diversity. And that makes it at least 9 high-ranking officers who are either women or people of color to be dismissed under this new administration. And Defense Secretary Hegseth has made clear he would remove any DEI hires or promotions or anybody promoting DEI programs. And among those big names dismissed is former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Charles C.Q. Brown, and the highest-ranking female officer, Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, and also the head of the Coast Guard. So Chatfield was put on that list that was put together by conservative watchdogs, urging Secretary Hegseth to dismiss what they called woke ideologues. And it comes after more firings, most notably the head of Cyber Command and the director of National Security Agency, Timothy Hogg, last week. So huge purge here at the Pentagon.
All right. Charlie D'Agata. Charlie, thank you. Are you paying more at the grocery store? Trump's sweeping new tariffs are expected to drive up the cost of food. We're going to break down which everyday items could cost you more next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. This is video captured by our chopper moments ago. It shows a large demonstration on the UCLA campus in Los Angeles. Activists protesting the Trump administration cuts to research, health, and higher education. On to a different price story here. Your grocery store bill. It could be a little bit higher because of Trump's tariffs, where a long list of products could suddenly become much pricier. So food industry analyst and editor for the site supermarketguru.com, Phil Lempert, joining us now. Obviously, this is the million-dollar question. We really want specifics. How could this all change our grocery store baskets with all of these tariffs? Which items are on that list?
Sure, Jules. Well, keep in mind, it is going to change what we buy. There's no question about it. Prices are going to go up. So, for example, when we look at produce, and we import about $27 billion worth of fruit every year, $20 billion worth of vegetables every year, 2.7 billion bananas every year. So, when we look at these tariffs, and especially on bananas, because there are tariffs on Guatemala, Ecuador, Costa Rica, that's going to be more expensive, and in some cases, even shortages. If we look at apple juice, for example, 60% of all the apple juice that we consume here in the U.S. comes from China. We import about $18 billion worth of beverages every year. Now, when we look at wines from Italy, 2.5 billion, from France, 2.5 billion. Our number one beer here in the U.S. Actually is a Mexican beer, Modelo Especial. We import $5.6 billion of that. So while the numbers that we're hearing from the administration says, oh, grocery prices might go up, 1.5% to 2%. On average, that's true. But when we look at these specific categories of imports, it's going to be a lot higher. We've got this tariff on Vietnam, where we import just so much of our shrimp from, 46%. That means the price of shrimp is going to go up probably at least 50%.
So I'm hearing produce, seafood, coffee, everything that we're showing on the screen right there. Now, President Trump has told American farmers to ramp up its production in response to the tariffs. So what do you say to that? Can we grow everything?
No, absolutely not. The people who are doing this tariff know nothing about the food industry. The food industry is global, and in fact, we used to grow a lot of our foods here. Keep in mind that about 99% of all the foods in the supermarket started in the ground. Even Twinkies have ingredients that started in the ground. So we've got to realize that because of climate change, we can't grow everything, whether it's in California, whether it's in Florida. I mean, we grow soybeans, wheat, and corn really well. But the other products that we want, not so much.
Okay, I didn't know that about Twinkies. Anyway, moving on. What is the advice to consumers? Do we stock up? Do we just wait and see? What's your advice?
I think we do stock up, but it depends on what the products are. So, for example, you don't want to stock up on produce because it has a short shelf life. But canned beer, for example, you could stock up on. Tequila from Mexico, you can stock up on. Some of the wines. In fact, I was looking at some reports this morning that said wines could go up easily from the EU about 30%. Because keep in mind, it's not just the tariff, but what happens is the tariff gets passed on from the exporter to the distributor to the retailer. So everybody adds a little bit more to it. So when we hear this 10%, that could easily translate to 15 or 20%. Also, you're going to laugh, but toilet paper and paper towels, just the way we had during the pandemic, they could be at risk because we get a lot of our wood pulp from Canada.
All right, Phil Lempert, good advice. Food industry analyst and editor for the site supermarketguru.com. Thank you so much. Meantime, A group of workers in Michigan say Trump's tariff could be good for business. Shrimpers in South Mississippi say they support the duties on imported seafood. Why? Well, they say they have to compete with the products coming in from overseas.
We have our shrimpers that are going out in their boats, and they have to be able to pay for fuel and for ice, and then we have to pay our American workers in the factory. And, you know, we've got this wild-caught product, which is a lot different than dealing with a pond-raised product, which are, you know, it's coming from overseas. It's coming from countries that don't have minimum wages.
If you have more questions about the president's new tariffs, we've got answers. Just go to the CBS News Instagram page and add your question in the comments on this post. You can also scan this QR code. It is on your screen. And Money Watch experts Jill Schlesinger and Kelly O'Grady are going to join the Daily Report tomorrow to answer the questions. That special airs at 6 p.m. Eastern right here on CBS News 24/7. Lottery players, listen up. New changes coming to Mega Millions that could give you a better chance of winning. Could, but it could cost you more. We're going to explain. Stay with us. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Cuteness alert. Scientists say they've brought back an animal species that's been extinct for thousands of years. CBS News reporter Christian Benavides has the details from Miami.
Say hello to Romulus and Remus. They're not technically direwolves, but a Dallas-based biotech company says the cubs are the closest thing to the extinct creature that hasn't howled in more than 10,000 years. Colossal Biosciences claims it produced 3 direwolves by modifying the DNA of modern gray wolf using the genome it uncovered in a direwolf tooth and fossils dating back 72,000 years.
They're genetically really similar, 99.5% similar, and phenotypically their morphology is also similar, only direwolves are larger, more muscular.
But the company hasn't shared evidence to back up its breakthrough, leaving some scientists skeptical.
When you claim all these great big things and then you don't provide the associated evidence, especially in something as controversial as this, that is a massive red flag.
If Colossal's claim is true, global ecology professor Corey Bradshaw says it's best to take these findings with a grain of salt.
We don't have the technology to modify entire genomes. We can modify components of genomes, and we can certainly sequence genomes. That's not enough to create an entire genome.
And these genetically engineered cubs lack the instincts of natural-born wolves, making them unlikely to answer the call of the wild. Christian Benavides, CBS News.
If you play the Mega Millions, you might want to be aware of some new rules. First, the tickets now cost $5 each. An optional add-on to increase non-jackpot prizes will cost $1. The $3 for 2 plays for the jackpot is being discontinued. The changes mean there are better odds of winning. All right, March Madness brings April jubilations, people partying at the University of Florida, and last night in San Antonio after the Gators beat Houston 65-63. CBS News correspondent Omar Villafranca reports on the nail-biting game and a comeback for the ages.
March Madness lived up to the hype. In the final game, Florida versus Houston, 2 #1 seeds in front of 66,000 fans here in San Antonio at the Alamo Dome for a 40-minute fight. Now, Houston came out strong in the first half, playing tight defense and keeping All-American guard Walter Clayton Jr. scoreless in the first half. But the second half, that was a different story. Florida kept chipping away and took the lead in the final minutes. Houston did have one final shot to tie or win the game, but they couldn't get the shot off. Gators win 65-63, winning their 3rd national title. Walter Clayton Jr. named the most outstanding player. It's the first title win for head coach Todd Golden, making him the youngest coach at 39 to cut down the nets. And maybe it was fate that Florida won, because one of the inductees into the 2025 Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame, Billy Donovan, who just happened to be the coach the last time the Florida Gators won the title. Back to you.
Omar, thank you. Checking back at the executive order signing ceremony at the White House, President Trump just signed an executive order aimed at revitalizing the coal industry. It will end, quote, discriminatory policies against the coal industry. America Decides with Major Garrett is up next. You are watching CBS News 24/7.